Well, hello, and welcome back to my book review desk. It has been a minute, that is for certain. But we're back with a big one. I've got 6 books to hit tonight. All of the Agatha Christie books from my book hauls earlier in the year. I have managed to power through them all. And we're going to talk a little bit about them. The highs, the lows, the hits, the misses. If you're thinking of dabbling into Agatha Christie, this will be the one for you, I guess. I did do a way back in the beginning year of the book Rating 100 Books Challenge. I did the first Agatha Christie extravaganza, and that was 4 books, so you can go back and check that out if you want to know about those books. Some of those were good, some of them were not so good, and it's kind of the same situation here. So let's, I'll show you the books, and then we're gonna jump right in, I guess. So the first one was Peril at End House. On holiday on the Cornish Riviera, Hercule Poirot is alarmed to hear pretty Nick Buckley describe her recent accidental brushes with death. First, on a treacherous Cornish hillside, the brakes of her car failed. Then, on a coastal path, a falling boulder missed her by inches. Later, an oil painting fell and almost crushed her in bed. So when Peril finds a bullet hole in Nick's sun hat, he decides that the girl needs his help. Can he find the would-be killer before he hits his target? Book 2 was And Then There Were None. Something I'm just going to interject here while I'm doing this is a lot of Agatha Christie books have more than one title. Some of them were changed for political correctness reasons, and some were changed for publisher reasons due to dual publishing in the US and the UK during the time they were being initially published. So that's something you might run into if you're looking these up. This one specifically, right on the front it says previously published as 10 Little Indians. But anyways, 10 strangers are lured to an isolated island mansion off the Devon coast by a mysterious UNON. 9, at dinner, a recorded message accuses each of them in turn of having a guilty secret, and by the end of the night, one of the guests is dead. 8, stranded by a violent storm and haunted by a nursery rhyme counting down one by one, as one by one they begin to die. 7, which among them is the killer, and will any of them survive? The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Who poisoned the wealthy Emily Inglethorpe, and how did the murderer penetrate and escape from her locked bedroom? Suspects abound in the quaint village of Styles St. Mary, from the heiress's fawning new husband to her 2 stepsons, her volatile housekeeper, and a pretty nurse who works in a hospital dispensary. With impeccable timing and making his unforgettable debut, the brilliant Belgian detective Hercule Poirot is on the case. One of the best-loved classic mysteries of all time, The Mysterious Affair at Styles will continue to enchant longtime fans and introduce Agatha Christie's unique storytelling genius to a host of new readers. Death on the Nile. The tranquility of a cruise along the Nile was shattered by the discovery that Lynette Ridgway had been shot through the head. She was young, stylish, and beautiful. A girl who had everything, until she lost her life. Hercule Poirot recalled an earlier outburst by a fellow passenger. I'd like to put my dear little pistol against her head and just press the trigger. Yet, in this exotic setting, nothing is ever quite what it seems. Endless Night. When penniless Michael Rogers discovers that beautiful house at Gypsy's Acre and then meets the heiress Ellie, it seems that all his dreams have come true at once. But he ignores an old woman's warning of an ancient curse, and evil begins to stir in paradise. As Michael soon learns, Gypsy's Acre is the place where fatal accidents happen. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Roger Ackroyd knew too much. He knew that the woman he loved had poisoned her brutal first husband. He suspected also that someone had been blackmailing her. Then, tragically, came the news that she had taken her own life with an apparent drug overdose. However, the Evening Post brought Roger one last fatal scrap of information, but before he could finish reading the letter, he was stabbed to death. Luckily, one of Roger's friends and the newest resident to retire to this normally quiet village takes over, none other than Monsieur Hercule Poirot. Beloved not only by generations of readers, but by Agatha Christie herself, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is a brilliant whodunit that firmly established the author's reputation as the Queen of Mystery. Because we have so many books to go, I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible with my points, not having reread my notes, but that's our first one back, so we're just going to see how this goes, guys. Aesthetics, what I'm going to talk about. Some of this you will have heard in the unboxing. Things that annoyed me about these particular copies were the official authorized edition stamps on almost all of them. These banners, soon to be a major motion picture. Look for the major motion picture Death on the Nile is on a bunch of them, because these particular editions, not the text blocks but the covers, were published around the time the newest edition of Death on the Nile came out, starring Gal Gadot as Lynette Ridgway. Let's just talk about Death on the Nile first, because it's going to be very straightforward. To speak to that particular movie, before I talk about the book, there were departures from the book in that movie that I didn't understand the choices that they took or why they did it. They didn't add anything to the story, and I felt they actually took away from the story. I apologize for the weird jump cut there. There was kind of a weird clicking sound happening in the room beside me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I think I've solved it. Let's hope that it stays that way. But the particular movie, I just wasn't the greatest fan of it. The one that all these advertisements are drawing your attention to. But Death on the Nile is a great book. It's a great mystery. I loved reading it. I already knew the story, but it's great. Would definitely recommend this book to anyone who likes Agatha Christie, who's interested in Agatha Christie. I think it's a really well done. The setting is great. The characters are great. The kind of amount of characters isn't too many, which is something that Agatha Christie can suffer from, is too many characters that are kind of similar, and then you struggle a little to keep track of them. But I might be a little bit biased towards this book, which is not the reason I'm talking about it first. It's just because I knew I was going to like it going in. At least I was pretty darn sure, because I've seen it in like media form so many times in different versions, but definitely would recommend. So there's that one. Just put that in the back, out of the way. Next, I'm gonna talk about Endless Night, which is the book that kind of drew me into this particular Agatha Christie rabbit hole. I had heard, I saw this book on Book Outlet when I was placing my order, and the cover intrigued me. And also, when I looked into it, it was said that it was one of Agatha Christie's favorite books that she wrote, I believe. And it's supposed to be a pretty significant departure from her other stories. I will say I did not find that to be the case in the end. At the beginning, the stylistic type of writing is a departure, and I was definitely like, at the first couple chapters, I remember saying to my boyfriend that I get why people say that about this book. Just kind of the flow and the structure, it is different, so I will give it that. However, the ultimate mystery of the story, I wasn't a fan of. When it got to the end, I felt so unsatisfied, and I'm just gonna look at my notes here and see what I actually wrote down when I read it, because right now I'm just going off of memory. But so this is what I have written down. Disappointed, not what I expected, not really engaging. The only interesting part was the last 2 chapters, and the payoff there wasn't even that good. It's kind of ironic that I read this after Death on the Nile, as they ended up being similar plot-wise. Death on the Nile was far superior, though. So that was also kind of something that I was like, well, these books are weirdly similar. And I don't want to give it away because you might have read one and not read the other. So I don't want to say exactly how they're similar. But what I will say is, if you've read other Agatha Christie books and you've heard that this one is different or unique in some way, I would say it's not that different plot-wise to her kind of formulaic way of writing. I would say the style of writing is different, and that might make it worth reading for you, but I don't think that the story itself is one that I wouldn't go around recommending it to people just as a book to read. I would say I'd pass on it. And also the title metaphor did not hit for me. I got it, but it was kind of late and just weak overall. There's kind of this little rhyme that's in the book, in the text, and it's right here at the top, and it says, "Some are born to sweet delight, some are born to endless night," and it's a song in the book, and I get it in the context of the story, but I was just like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's because it was written in a different time, and the context and the culture and just like the period, maybe it would have hit better to someone reading it when the book was originally published, but I didn't. I'm a thumbs down on this one, guys. I don't understand the level of praise that it gets. I'm just gonna see if there's anything else in my notes here. It definitely has a different structure and tone than her other books. I've read It deals with inherent goodness versus evil. It's very dark. So I agree with that, and just kind of the general sense of reviews that I've read. There's definitely a darker tone and a more heavy overtone through the whole story. This one feels like it's trying to send a message, but it just fell flat for me. That's just all I'm gonna say. I wouldn't recommend it. Next we have, let's see, And Then There Were None. Since I'm talking about misses currently, this was another miss for me. I was not a fan of this book. Let's see what my notes say. Didn't like this book. Hard to keep the character straight. Unsatisfying ending. I didn't appreciate the plot device used to reveal the killer. And honestly, I found neither of them satisfying. I was annoyed and frustrated that I wasted my time reading this book. I think the setup and the kind of play of like the 10, 9, 8, 7 and all the people dying and the idea of this book was really good. But the execution of it, again, I just didn't like it. I wouldn't recommend it. I was so frustrated when I was done reading that book. I almost wanted to like break from Agatha Christie then, and I think that was only actually like the second one out of the bunch that I read when I was reading them in order. Yeah, that one was just so disappointing for me because I had an expectation that was high, and it didn't make it even close. Oops. So then we have kind of middle of the road book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, the first book featuring our beloved Hercule Poirot. I was also not a fan of this though, unfortunately. This book is the one that has the original and the edited ending. And so what I have there in these notes is that I appreciated being able to read the difference. It gave you like kind of an interesting view into writing and how like the editing process works. And so that was kind of a really fun aspect to have in this book, but it was unrelated to the actual context of the book, which I found it was just kind of blah and not very interesting. There was too much misdirection and too much information withheld. Peril constantly saying he can't reveal until the end is getting old. So by this time I'd read quite a few Peril books overall, and he just holds everything in. He doesn't give any information to the reader or to Hastings or in this book to the doctor, and you just get frustrated because there's no way for you to figure out the story because information's being withheld from you. And so by the time I got around to this book, I was kind of over that plot device, and I'm just refreshing my memory about what this specific book story was. This was the locked bedroom one, right? Yeah. It wasn't good. That's what I will say. Then the most recent read was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And halfway through this book, I kind of stopped reading it for an extended period of time because life just got busy, but it was a bit of a struggle, and maybe it was because I had read so many Agatha Christie books already, But it was okay. That's what I would say. I was kind of Agatha Christie'd out, but in the context of all the other books and refreshing my memory, it wasn't that bad, but I also wasn't a huge fan. So this kind of whole slate of Agatha Christie for me has been very much a miss outside of Death on the Nile and Peril at Endhouse. Peril at Endhouse was the first one of all of these ones I read. It was the last book that I chose when I was buying all these Agatha Christie books, and I just kind of stuck it in there at the end. But of all of the other books, this is the one that I would recommend. Other than Death on the Nile, which I'll always hold up, is a fantastic book. Peril at Endhouse was a surprise for me. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story. It is a Peril book, but it doesn't suffer from all of the frustrating elements as much, maybe because it's not as thick. It gets more to the point. The pace feels faster. The characters are interesting. The main character of Nick is interesting. The dynamic between her and her friends and all of the kind of surrounding aspects. I think this was a solid book. So of all of these 6 books, the only 2 that I would actually recommend are these 2. Death on the Nile and Peril at Endhouse. I think they will give you a really good glimpse into how Agatha Christie writes, and they are 2 of her better works, at least of this selection, that I think you won't feel like you wasted your time reading them. And they'll be fun. This one you can watch the movie of. This one I don't think this was ever made into any kind of media. But that's it. That is these 6 books. That was my second deep dive into Agatha Christie. I don't think I ever ended up talking about specific covers. Death on the Nile has a million book covers, so find one. If you decide to get this book, find one that's to your taste, because there are a million versions of it out there. These covers are all more recent kind of editions of the books, but again, you'll find all of these with different book jackets. So if these aren't particularly to your taste, which a lot of these weren't particularly visually appealing to me, so if you're looking for them and they don't look like these particular copies, don't panic. Also, if you're interested in one of these particular books and you can't find it, just double check that it might be published in your country under a different title, because that's something that happened. That could just be fatigue, but the fact that I would leave 4 of these books on the cutting room floor kind of signals to me that this author isn't one that I'm going to revisit. She has a wide catalog, so if it is something that you're interested in, there's lots to choose from. Don't feel like you're limited to these 6 or the other 4. A couple of those ones were good as well. I still have 2 of them on my bookshelf. As it stands right now, these 2 will probably be the only ones that remain on my bookshelf. I'll probably donate these or give them away, trade them off or something. I don't know, but that's it. This is me getting back into book reviews. Expect a little bit more diversity of author and story. coming from this point forward, I'm still really busy in my garden. I'm going to try and be doing, if you're interested in that kind of thing, garden updates every week, just small ones, more to help me keep track of kind of how things are progressing. It'll give me a record for next year to kind of see when I seeded things and when they started growing. But if that's not your thing and you're just here for the books, well, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one. So thanks for joining me here tonight, guys. Bye.